It was a cold and wintry day in Jarbidge Canyon, blizzard cold. The snow had drifted to more than 3 feet by the time the stagecoach, carrying $4,000 in gold coin, made its way to the outskirts of the isolated gold camp of Jarbidge. Jarbidge is a Shoshone word meaning evil spirit. The name was apt, for there was evil lurking in Jarbidge Canyon that day. It was December 5th, 1916. The driver of the stagecoach, Fred Searcy, shivered from the cold. He needed food and a drink badly. Nervously, he shifted his foot against the mail pouch beneath his seat as if to assure himself it was still there. Fred Searcy was running late. He wondered whether the miners of Jarbidge, anxious to cash their payroll, were getting worried. And as evening blanketed the area in darkness, Mrs. Dexter, who owned a small cottage on the outskirts of Jarbidge, looked up from her sewing at the sound of a shot. Someone shooting coyotes, she mused, but her thoughts had drifted elsewhere by the time the stage had passed by. She hardly noticed that the driver was wrapped tightly in his heavy coat, his hat pulled down against the icy cold, a blanket over his legs. Though Mrs. Dexter could barely see through the blinding snow, she knew Fred Searcy had finally made it into town with the mine payroll. The men of Jarbidge were used to Searcy being late, of course. After all, Crippen grade leading into town was treacherous even in summer. But still, the men began to worry. They formed a search party and set out into the blinding winter snows. In a clump of willows several hundred yards from the main street, the missing stagecoach was found, blanketed with falling snow. The mail sacks had been cut open. Blood-stained envelopes were scattered on the frozen ground. And there was the body of Fred Searcy, the driver. He'd been shot once in the head. The next morning, trackers returned to the site of the abandoned stagecoach. There they found a dog print in the snow, a print left from the night before. Immediately, the townsfolk set out to find the mysterious canine. Feverishly, they checked the paw prints of scores of animals before a big yellow dog was brought to the murder scene. Immediately, the animal began digging furiously in the snow, and another blood-stained mail pouch was uncovered. The miners of Jarbidge had their first real clue to Searcy's murder. Witnesses identified the dog as a stray that had been befriended by a local miner by the name of Ben Cull. 33 years old, Cull had come to Jarbidge as a cook for the miners, but he ran with a rough crowd. Among them, Ed Beck, a part-time miner, the cut-lip Swede, a full-time drunk, and a man by the name of Billy McGraw, another miner with an indifferent attitude towards work. A hasty search of Ben Cull's cabin uncovered a .45 caliber revolver, recently fired. A single shell was missing. When the local sheriff arrived on the scene, he was met by the justice of the peace and a witness of sorts, a big, shaggy, yellow dog. Ben Cull was taken into custody. In the fall of 1917, a trial was held in Elko, Nevada. The case for the prosecution was airtight. As the crime was recreated, the evidence against Cull was overwhelming. Someone had slipped out of town that afternoon and climbed a hillside overlooking the road to Jarbidge. As the stagecoach approached, the killer leaped aboard and shot the driver. This was the shot that Mrs. Dexter had heard. The man who had driven past her house, however, was not Fred Searcy, but his murderer. It could have been the perfect crime, until, that is, a dog led authorities to Ben Cull. During the trial, Cull tried unsuccessfully to throw blame on his friends, Beck, McGraw, and the cut-lip Swede, but to no avail. He claimed at first that the gun was not his, that he had loaned it out. He claimed that he had been nowhere near the roadway that night, that he'd been drinking with friends. Those friends, however, failed to come forward. The prosecution introduced into evidence a letter from the mail pouch. It was smeared with a bloody handprint. Experts convinced the jury that the handprint had been made by Cull. On October 6, 1917, Ben Cull was found guilty and sentenced to be shot. He appealed to the Nevada Supreme Court. The opinion, written by Justice Pat McCarran, upheld the execution, citing the bloody handprint found on the mail pouch. It was the first time a handprint was used in a United States courtroom. But as the date of his execution approached, Cull finally confessed. He claimed that the driver, Fred Searcy, was going to help him fake the holdup, that Searcy had changed his mind, that the two had struggled for the gun, and Searcy had been killed accidentally. Although the court didn't believe him, it converted his sentence to life. Ben Cull was transferred to the Nevada State Prison. Ben Cull would spend the next 26 years of his life in security deep within the prison. He would be turned down for parole a record 27 times. In 1944, at age 60 and terminally ill, he was finally released. He died in Sacramento, California, 6 months later. But the story doesn't end there. The men at the trial went on to make history in their own right. E.P. Carville, the young district attorney who prosecuted Cull, went on to serve as a district judge, a U.S. attorney, the governor of Nevada, and later as a United States senator. Justice McCarran went on to become a U.S. senator as well. He would serve for 20 years, and so distinguished was the career of Pat McCarran that he remains to this day the only Nevadan honored with a statue. It stands in Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C. And the big yellow dog that led lawmen to the murderer? History lends no clue to its fate, but it's doubtful that Cull remembered him as man's best friend. And the gold? It was never recovered. Some say it still lies buried in the rugged terrain near Jarbidge. $4,000 in sparkling gold coins. And it is said that Native Americans still believe that an evil spirit dwells in that region, and it could very well be true. But the robbery of the stage to Jarbidge continues to live on in Nevada's history. You see, it was the last stagecoach robbery in the United States.